I still have a dream. It is a dream deeply rooted in the American dream. I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal.
I was born by the river in a little tent. Oh, just like that river, I've been running ever since. It's been a long time coming, but I know a change is gonna come. Oh, yes, it will. It's been too hard living, but I'm afraid to die. 'Cause I don't know what's up there beyond the sky. It's been a long time coming, but I know a change is gonna come. Oh, yes, it will.
Can you imagine somebody like me from Rocky Mount, North Carolina, who grew up on welfare, end up being on Richmond City Council? I am so grateful that the people in Richmond had faith in me.
Dr. King sacrificed his life in pursuit of equality. He said that one of the greatest inequalities is the injustice in healthcare.
Dr. King reminded us we have a responsibility.
So as long as I have breath in my body, I'm going to pass on this legacy.
There should be a MLK in each one of us as we strive to build for better communities and tackling social justice.
And I think that when he said, "We shall overcome," it says someday. I think he was just the tip of the iceberg.
I have to believe that his dream will become a reality.
And oh, there are times when I thought I wouldn't last so long. But now I think that I can carry on. It's been a long time coming, but I know a change is gonna come. Oh, yes, it will.
Welcome to the 44th Annual Martin Luther King Jr. Community Leaders Awards, sponsored by Virginia Union University and Dominion Energy.
Over the next hour, we're going to highlight Dr. King's impact here as we recognize individuals and organizations that embody Dr. King's legacy, selflessly and collectively championing for racial, economic, and social equality.
This year's beloved community and the Mlk Legacy Awardees are being honored for their efforts in keeping Dr. King's vision for the beloved community alive. Stay with us as we share more about these phenomenal men and women working in the areas of health equity, social justice, faith, art and culture, education, and economic justice.
Over 100,000 families will join us today in celebrating social justice, community wellness, and the progress we are making to ensure equality and equity lives for us all in this Commonwealth. Today, we're excited to honor 8 wonderful people and organizations for their work in ensuring the common good spreads throughout our Commonwealth. Thanks to our new governor for giving remarks to remind us of the power of social justice, particularly how we create avenues for peace, prosperity, and living out the American dream for all residents of our great Commonwealth. To T.C. Milner and those who are part of the Living the Dream organization who started this 44 years ago, we pause to say thank you to you all.
Welcome to the campus of Virginia Union University. We are excited on this significant day in the struggle of America to move towards what we anticipated, what was formalized in the founding words of our nation, that all men are created equal and endowed by their Maker. We're privileged to live in that legacy. And in that long legacy has been an army of dedicated leaders, men and women, who have fought to bring about an equal society. We have not reached it. But one of the soldiers, one of the drum majors in that struggle for full inclusion is Martin Luther King Jr. And at Virginia Union, he is the paradigm of who we are. And I want you to know we are so glad that from around the world you have joined us today in this wonderful observance of Martin Luther King Jr. and the promise that his life still gives to the future of this nation.
As part of this momentous occasion, it's our honor to introduce the 74th Governor of Virginia. A Richmond native and Harvard Business School graduate, Governor Youngkin, as part of his vision for a brighter Virginia, aims to make our Commonwealth the best place to live, work, and raise a family. Governor Glenn Youngkin.
What an honor it is to celebrate the life and legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. We as one Virginia look back on our past and recognize how far we have come, and we can come together for a common future. Dr. King called us all to be better, to judge one another not by the color of our skin, but rather based on the content of our character. He started every day in prayer, and so do I. And I can't think of any better way to honor him today than to thank God for the life and legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King.
Our first honoree receives the Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Beloved Community Award in Health Equity, presented to Dr. Danny Avula, Joanne Cirillo, and Jackie Lawrence of the Richmond and Henrico Health District.
When the COVID-19 pandemic hit, with death tolls climbing higher and higher in traditionally underserved communities, the Richmond and Henrico Health District responded in non-traditional ways, partnering with churches and grassroots organizations to ensure vaccine education and vaccinations were made readily available to those communities impacted the most.
Dr. King sacrificed his life in pursuit of equality. He said that one of the greatest inequalities is the injustice in healthcare. That has been a guiding principle for us as a health department. We break it down and look at how different segments of our community are being impacted.
That's really the future of public health, thinking about the whole person, the whole community, and wellness.
We approach all of our work in that lens, and COVID has been no different. We fully expected that we would see challenges, particularly in our African American community. So when we started doing community testing events back in April of 2020, we immediately went to our community health workers who work in public housing communities or other low-income neighborhoods around the region.
When everyone else in the state was doing drive-up testing, here in Richmond we were doing walk-up testing.
We also sent mobile teams out into neighborhoods where people maybe don't have good internet access or aren't paying attention to the news or understandably have skepticism about the vaccine.
In this time of misinformation, folks don't know where to turn to, so that trusted community voice is critical. The communities in Richmond and Henrico have just had an immeasurable impact.
We worked really hard to hire neighborhood residents to be our outreach workers, to have people who looked like the neighbors we were trying to vaccinate be the ones to convey the message, and then to lower barriers to access by making sure that people knew it was free and by bringing the vaccine to their community.
I think Dr. King, the inequities that he was working towards, poverty, education, healthcare access, are the same exact things that affect health. And that's what we as public health leaders know we have to work towards.
Dr. King's sacrifice has paved the way for us to really be focused on the injustices that need to be addressed.
Welcome back to the 44th Annual Martin Luther King Jr. Community Leaders Awards, sponsored by Virginia Union University and Dominion Energy.
This year, Juneteenth was designated at both the federal and state levels as a holiday. But long before this occasion, this next awardee was recognizing Juneteenth and enriching the Richmond area with cultural events for decades. The Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Beloved Community Award for Art and Culture is presented to Miss Janine Bell of the Alegba Folklore Society, Incorporated.
The cessation of breathing in your life is but the belated announcement of an earlier death of the spirit. You died when you refused to stand up for right. You died when you refused to stand up for truth. You died when you refused to stand up for justice.
I can certainly identify with Dr. King's sacrifices because in doing work for the people, we often put ourselves last. It is a privilege to do the work, but it's also a responsibility. And sometimes that responsibility can be very big. Dr. King wanted the godness that lives inside all people, but in his estimation, in Black people, to be seen and revealed. That we have power, that we have light, insights, and soul and spirit that influences every aspect of what the world is. And so the Alegba Folklore Society, through artistic engagement, wants people to be able to experience and recognize and realize some of those same attributes, some of those same energies, some of those same potentialities, some of those same truths. The Alegba Folklore Society is a not-for-profit cultural arts and education organization based here in Richmond. There we focus on material culture and visual arts. We present concerts, dance theater, performance lectures, workshops, and we guide cultural history tours. We want to reinstill cultural foundations in the African American community and also build bridges of understanding to the broader community. Our place in getting Juneteenth recognized is inviting people to consider that this is something that we can celebrate when the last of enslaved Africans were finally free. To think about the shoulders upon which we stand, and that what we do right now makes history and creates our future. And to be able to do those things consistently, I hope, helped the recognition of Juneteenth as an important time of reflection. Like with Dr. King, I hope that in some way my work has made some difference, some change, that people can feel good about themselves, that people can feel their own promise manifesting, that people can learn about who we really are. If these things are happening, then the sacrifice is worth it.
For the past couple of presidential election cycles, voting rights have taken center stage. For our next awardees, protecting the voting rights of marginalized communities has been a longtime mission. The Beloved Community Award in Social Justice is being presented to longtime friends Clovia Lawrence and Sandra Antoine for Operation Stamp the Vote.
As a response to voter participation uncertainty fueled by the coronavirus pandemic and national threats of newly emerging voter suppression tactics, a group of nonprofits with a shared mission of political outreach and engagement came together in early 2020 to form Operation Stamp the Vote.
Each of you assembled here today decided that you were going to see that 10 other people are registered before the last day, which I think is next weekend, the 14th, I believe. Just see what a power you can be. Then after getting people registered, that is another even greater responsibility, and that is to go out to vote.
We met each other because when you're working in this space of grassroots and outreach, it becomes a cliche. You know, I do grassroots, I do outreach. But the effect and how deep you go when you do the outreach. Do you do the outreach when no one is looking? Do you do the outreach whether it's a dollar sign attached to it or not? And so when I met Sandra over 10 years ago, it was for another event and all of the community works that we do. And then we just started talking about voting and some things that we saw. You know, there are a lot of great organizations doing wonderful things out in the community, but we wanted to add to the spice of what was going on to make the process easier for the voter.
I think just in believing and being a soldier and inducted in the military during the Vietnam era, real soldier, just understanding how relevant it was. Even back during those times, as many of us took oaths to defend this country, as we were fighting for rights of people that looked like us, but yet we were willing to give our life. And so it's been a fire. And this storm over here, that's all, that's it. And just interacted and just realizing the power of unity. Operation Stamp the Vote was a concept, it was an idea. As we were doing what we do, registering voters and restorative justice, this was during the pandemic, the early start of it. You know, I would always reach out to the seniors, you know, you're gonna be early voting. Let's check your voter registration application. Make sure that you're registered where you live and just making sure that you were prepared to vote. And all of a sudden this idea came up because they were talking about, okay, now not only do we do the application, but we have to send, which we can take the voter registration application, but we can't touch the ballot. So that meant having stamps. So I'm sitting there one night and was like, okay, I'm gonna give her a stamp, I'm gonna give him a stamp. Stamps are adding up. I was like, no, we need help. And it's always my go-to first phone call. Hey, we have to do something. And all of a sudden, Operation Stamp the Vote became the idea.
My work relating to the King legacy. So when I look at that legacy and understanding how he felt in his private hour and communicating with Dr. Wyatt T. Walker, and I was like, tell me about Dr. King. And he had all of those insecurities as well, that he wasn't doing a great job. And I feel that way. You know, even when we stand here and we do the work that we do and people tell us that we're impactful, but way down deep inside, you feel like, am I really impactful? And that's what his legacy means to me. And so as long as I have breath in my body, I'm going to pass on this legacy.
Our call to action.
Our call to action.
There should be a MLK in each one of us as we strive to build for better communities and tackling social justice.
Welcome back to the Martin Luther King Jr. Community Leaders Awards.
Behind me is a statue created by Kehinde Wiley, who also did the portraits of Michelle Obama, our former First Lady, and President Obama as well. And it's a play off of the old Jeb Stuart statue that used to stand right here in the city of Richmond, and a different take featuring an African-American man on top of a horse. And this was his take on the landscape that used to litter Richmond. Dr. King talked about the creation of a beloved community. And the symbols of Confederate monuments don't represent the beloved community at all. He wanted us to devote our time to essentially destroy the triple evils of poverty, racism, and militarism. And unfortunately, those monuments that stood on Monument Avenue and throughout the city of Richmond represent all three of those evils. Now we're charged with unwinding that work. And it is obviously slow progress, but the removal represents progress. Progress that I think is aligned with what Dr. King wanted for communities like ours.
Firm believers in the biblical words, faith without works is dead, community service is the cornerstone of our next honoree's ministry. The beloved Community Award in Faith is presented to Reverend Robert Winfrey and his church, New Life Deliverance Tabernacle.
Concerned about the rising homicide rates in Richmond, Reverend Robert Winfrey, pastor at New Life Deliverance Tabernacle, drew upon his years as a conflict resolution mediator and opened his church to the community to discuss solutions to stem the violence.
Somewhere we must come to see that social progress never rolls in on the wheels of inevitability. It comes through the tireless efforts and the persistent work of dedicated individuals, and without this hard work, time itself becomes an ally. And we must realize that the time is always right to do right.
When we become silent to things that really matter, we do him an injustice. But when we cry loud and spare not, and when we don't just talk, but we also become the manifestation of what the dream is all about, then that gives credence and credit to his legacy. One Wednesday night after Bible study, the DEA, state police, and the local police knocked on the door, and they said they had a warrant for Robert Winfrey. I said, "You got a warrant for what?" He said, for distribution of heroin. I said, "Man, I've been stopped." He said, "You ain't stopped soon enough." He said, "This came from a year previously to the time that you stopped." And I went on vacation. I went on vacation again. Different mindset, different attitude. I was able to receive the minimum sentence only by the grace of God. And during that time, my whole life had changed. And we started a thing called the Christian Brothers Fellowship. And we actually started having Bible studies and, in the system. One of the ministers, was Minister Norwood Carson from Trinity, Berkeley Jones, they noticed something about me. And so they said, "You got a call on your life." I said, "I don't understand what you mean." And he said, "You got a call on your life." And he said, a lot of people gravitate towards you, and I hear you talk. And he said, "I think God is calling you to the ministry." And so I felt something. I just didn't know what it was. I couldn't identify it. So what I did, I said, "God, if this is what it's supposed to be, then allow the transformation to take place in here." And that's how I got started in the ministry. So one of the things that I think that any institution, any church that's worth its weight in salt has to have a mission statement. And we said, and our mission statement, it comes from Isaiah 61, and we talk about the Spirit of love God is upon me, people of New Life Deliverance Tabernacle, to go into prison doors and to set captives free, to empower all of God's people, physically, spiritually, through feeding the hungry, clothing the naked, visiting the sick and widows, educated, but above all that we're in souls for Christ as we are led by the Holy Spirit of God. This is the village approach that we have right now. It takes all, but I can't do it by myself. No one person can do it by themselves. But if we can come and rally around each other and help each other, and my thing is that we can do it better together. If I can help somebody along the way, then my living won't be in vain. And even though this earthly tabernacle dissolved, it still lives on with the work that you've done and the work that God has used you to do. Dr. King was a drum major. And I think that when he said, "We shall overcome," it says someday. I think we thought that we have already overcome, but he was just starting us off. And I think that somewhere down the line, we dropped the ball. But I think now for us, I think that we need to pick it up and we need to help fulfill that dream. Otherwise, it'll become a nightmare.
Thank you to the sponsors of the Martin Luther King Community Leaders Awards.
Dr. King once said that the function of education is to teach one to think intensively and to think critically. Intelligence plus character, that is the goal of true education. That is the ideology shared by our honoree for the Beloved Community Award in Education, presented to an Achievable Dream Incorporated.
An Achievable Dream Incorporated embodies Dr. King's legacy by providing educational equity to the Richmond and Hampton Roads communities.
Now, the breath of life is the outward concern for the welfare of others, as I said. Man has not begun to live until he can rise above the narrow confines of his own individual concerns to the broader concerns of all humanity.
We have been inspired by Dr. King through the perseverance and relentless nature of establishing such a program. An Achievable Dream is a nonprofit organization in partnership with school divisions. We are currently in Newport News, Virginia Beach, and Henrico County. The mission of An Achievable Dream is to bring equity to education. It is our goal to level the playing field for the students who may otherwise not have the same opportunities and resources as other students throughout the division. For us, bringing equity to education is really about identifying the best approach to education for our students, for our dreamers, and making sure that they are receiving it in the way that works for them. Our students are with us traditionally kindergarten through 12th grade. We have a 62% college graduation rate. We have a 100% on-time graduation rate from high school. 95% of our students go on to college. We know where 98% of our alumni are. We stay in contact with them, and we have almost 1,000 alumni. You know, the impact of An Achievable Dream, I wish you could just meet some of our young people, our alumni. I think that to hear our students speak about the program is probably the best definition of impact. Walter Siegeloff, the founder of An Achievable Dream, was told many times that this wasn't possible, that it wouldn't work. Well, we're getting ready to celebrate our 30th anniversary, and it does work. To watch them grow and live lives of fulfillment and to have the careers that they want and to be starting their own families. For so many of them, we watched their growth, their journey, and there were times that they didn't see that for themselves. You know, they did not see college as a true option, or they didn't imagine owning their own home, or working for a Fortune 500 company, or being a doctor. And all of those dreams have come true. I think Dr. King inspired us through a vision of hope. Those things that are really worth accomplishing typically aren't easy, but you can't give up.
At Living the Dream Incorporated, formerly known as the Community Learning Week, we remain committed to realizing Dr. King's vision of the beloved community through community service, not only in January, but throughout the year. This year, Dr. King's legacy of uplifting the community is more important now than ever before. The COVID-19 pandemic and recent social unrest have unveiled continued inequities in our healthcare system, our justice system, our education system, and our economic system. We implore you to not only remember Dr. King's words, but to mimic his actions, to take care of all of our brothers and sisters of all colors, to create a nation that is truly for all. With Dr. King, the struggle did not end, but rather a vision for a way forward began. Thank you, and God bless you.
With this faith, we will be able to hew out of the mountain of despair a stone of hope. With this faith, we will be able to transform the jangling discords of our nation into a beautiful symphony of brotherhood. With this faith, we will be able to work together, to pray together, to struggle together, to go to jail together, to stand up for freedom together, knowing that we will be free one day.
we took on the commemoration of the sesquicentennial of the Emancipation Proclamation. And in deciding how to commemorate that, we wanted to show that emancipation wasn't a moment, it was a movement. The statue was built by the Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Memorial Commission. The woman evokes the Statue of Liberty and the feeling of liberty finally coming to the enslaved community. We also wanted to represent a family and hope in the baby, but show the pain and trauma of being enslaved with a man and the marks on his back, but just try to capture what it must have felt like in that moment that each individual found out that they were no longer enslaved. The base of the statue recognizes 5 African-American Virginians who were instrumental in the fight for emancipation, and then 5 post-Civil War who were instrumental in the fight for freedom and equality. We think we picked a very good group, but we're looking for ways to honor more people.
Thank you to the sponsors of the Martin Luther King Community Leaders Awards.
The Beloved Community Award recipients in the area of economic justice is presented to the Ujima Legacy Fund and the Sister Fund, 2 grassroots organizations that demonstrate the collective impact a few can have on many. They recently teamed up along with the Community Foundation of Greater Richmond to launch the Mlk Fund for Economic and Racial Justice.
First, the Ujima Legacy Fund, inspired by conversations in a barbershop and the example of a postal worker turned philanthropist. Ujima Legacy Fund, Ujima being Swahili for collective work and responsibility, was founded in 2013 by Reggie Gordon, Robert Dortch, and Damon Jiggets, 3 local African-American men who wanted to make a difference through personal financial investment in the community.
We are moving in the right direction, and with a feeling that this problem can be solved in the United States if enough people give themselves to it, if they devote their lives to breaking down all of the barriers that separate men from men on the basis of race or color.
The Ujima Legacy Fund is just a great group of men. It changes a bit every year. It's not the same guys every year. But when we come together in person, which we haven't been able to do for quite some time, there's actually an energy in the room because our common interest is in making a difference in the lives of young people. And the idea was to band together as black men in the Richmond area to make contributions or grants to organizations that work to educate our youth. I mean, a perfect example, you know, in my mind is this group that we're funding this year that's training future leaders, future advocates that come from the community. They will one day be advocating for civil rights. They will one day be making a difference. The men in our group range from their 20s to their 70s, right? But a lot of us, and I'm one of those, we're a generation that has benefited from the work that Dr. King did. And it's part of that. What goes along with that is a responsibility to give back, in my mind. We are the largest black men in the Giving Circle in the country to the best of our knowledge, but we think we're only at the beginning of this. We think that we could easily be 10 times as large and make 10 times as many grants. We have established an endowment fund because this is not something that ends with me or us. When all of us are gone today, we fully intend for this work to continue on. So it's a long-term project. Martin Luther King taught us that direct action done in a particular way can be extremely effective. It takes courage sometimes, it takes belief, but at the end of the day, the way that you make a difference is to put yourself out there, to take direct action, and to do it in a way that is productive, that's not just destructive, with a goal and a determination to make a difference.
Sister Fund is a grassroots donor education and grant-making initiative uniting civic-minded African-American women's ideas and actions through philanthropy and collective giving. Sister Fund's mission is to improve the lives of African American women and girls by transforming local nonprofits who support the development of African American young girls and women through significant collective financial investments. Members not only leverage their resources to increase the impact of their giving, but also engage in an experience that transforms the community on a powerful journey of giving.
Justice is indivisible. Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere.
We have to take responsibility to ensure that we keep his dream alive, that we keep checking on the pieces of the dream that have not been addressed and that have not been realized. And yes, we can make all of it happen. So for Sister Fund, we believe that our work really reflects King's legacy because King required that the community respond to its needs firsthand. We believe that you should hold the government and other systems responsible to make sure there was equity in those systems. But at the same time, you have a responsibility to build your community. Sister Fund, the women that are involved are making a financial commitment to their communities. They are shoring up African American programs that support women and girls. And so while we are making sure that other systems recognize the importance of these programs, we're not waiting for them to support them. We're supporting them ourselves. Personally, Dr. King has been a part of my life for a very, very long time. I recalled when Dr. King was killed. I was in the first grade. And at that time, I was in a segregated school. I didn't know it. I was at Fair Oaks Elementary, and the teachers found the TV and pulled it in the library, and we all went and watched what was happening. But I recall that I have a responsibility because of Dr. King. I have a responsibility to really take some of the blows and do the best I can. And that's why when the opportunity to chair Sister Fund came my way, I could not refuse it. Because in the back of my mind, I'm always remembering that Dr. King reminded us we have a responsibility.
Thank you to our sponsors for their support of this special Martin Luther King Community Leaders Awards presentation.
To introduce our 2022 Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Legacy Award recipient is Diane Leopold, Executive Vice President and COO at Dominion Energy.
Thank you. It's an honor to introduce this year's MLK Legacy Award winner, Willie J. Dell, the first Black woman to serve on the Richmond City Council. During her tenure, which lasted through 1982, she promoted Black rights, equal opportunity, and minority voter participation. At the time, those were considered radical ideas. To some people, they still are. She has won far too many awards and served as president, chair, or board member of far too many organizations for me to list now. Willie Dell, this truly remarkable woman, embodies Dr. King's spirit of selfless giving and his dedication to nonviolent, transformational social justice.
So Jesus gave us a new norm of greatness. If you want to be important, wonderful. If you want to be recognized, wonderful. If you want to be great, wonderful. But recognize that he who is greatest among you shall be your servant. That's a new definition of greatness.
I don't think it was social work that led me into politics. I think it was my mouth. I had an opinion on a lot of different things, and there were persons who could hear me give that opinion, and then I got invited to run for city council. I don't think I ever would have thought on my own to become a politician. And I don't consider myself a politician. I really consider myself a strong social worker who had an opinion, who didn't mind expressing that opinion and was not afraid, and was championing a people's right to express their opinion. I was invited to run for city council by Jim Carpenter, who used to be my pastor. I was a member of All Souls Presbyterian Church, and Jim was a member of Richmond City Council, and Jim was retiring from that position to go to Quito, Ecuador, to become a missionary. And he and Henry Morris had contacted several guys to run for city council to replace Jim, and couldn't get a fellow to run. And Jim told Henry, I know a member of my church, Willie Dell, and I think she would be excellent. So that's how when they came to my house and asked me about this, you gotta be crazy. Nobody in their right mind would ask somebody like me to become a member of Richmond City Council. But Nathan, my husband, and I, we talked about it, went in the kitchen and talked about it, and I came back and said yes. I think I had the best managed campaign for a pioneer person who had never been involved in politics, based on the involvement of the students at VCU Graduate School of Social Work. They organized it, they planned it. I was just a figurehead out front. That's when the Richmond majority came in. There were 5 blacks who were elected. Now that was a hallelujah experience. I can't remember the exact feeling, but I remember being so happy. I was surprised and happy. And I thought that was the climax of my life. Can you imagine somebody like me from Rocky Mount, North Carolina, who grew up on welfare, who went to college on a scholarship? I'm sorry. End up being on Richmond City Council. Yes, I am so grateful that the people in Richmond had faith in me. And I was elected over and over and over and tried to do my best, I really did, along with the other members of the majority. And heaven knows we were coming from different places. The person who influenced me to go into politics was Esmeralda Hawkins, my history teacher in Rocky Mount, North Carolina. My history teacher who told us to obey the law but challenge the law. There's nothing wrong with being kind. I know that might not seem like a political weapon, but you can turn folks' head just by being kind. I think that, yes.
Thank you for celebrating this special holiday with us, and congratulations to each of our honorees.
As demonstrated by our phenomenal awardees, we encourage you to remember and honor the work and legacy of Dr. King, not just in words, but in deeds to build the beloved community.
Thanks for joining us.
Freedom, freedom, freedom. Freedom. What do we want now? Freedom, freedom, freedom.
Ain't gonna let nobody
turn me around.
Oh,
Turn me around.
turn me
around.
Ain't gonna let nobody
Turn me around.
I'm gonna
keep on walking.
Oh,
Keep on talking. Marching up to freedom land.
ain't gonna let no jailhouse
Turn me around.
No.
Turn me around.
No.
Turn me around.
Ain't gonna let no jailhouse
Turn me around.
I'm gonna
keep on
keep
walking.
on walking,
keep on talking,
keep on talking,
marching up to freedom.
Ain't gonna let segregation
turn me around,
no,
turn me around,
no,
turn me around.
ain't gonna let segregation
turn me around.
I'm gonna
keep on walking, keep on
no matter how
marching
tired,
up to freedom.
I ain't gonna let race hatred
turn me around.
Oh no,
turn me around.
turn me
Turn me around.
Ain't gonna let race hatred
Turn me around.
I'm gonna
keep on
gotta keep pressing,
keep on
gotta keep fighting,
marching up to freedom.
ain't gonna let Mississippi
turn me around.
No.
Turn me around.
Turn me
around.
Ain't gonna let Mississippi
turn me around.
I'm gonna
keep on
walking,
keep on
talking,
marching up to freedom.
Ain't gonna let nobody
turn me around.
No.
Turn me around. Turn me around.
Ain't gonna let nobody
turn me around.
Said I'm gonna
keep on
walking,
keep on
talking,
marching
up to freedom land.
I honestly believe that his dream will come true. I believe that. Because I don't think it was his. I think it was given to him through his creator, through his father. I believe that. That's who he was. He couldn't help it.
And I've seen the promised land. I may not get there with you, but I want you to know tonight that we as a people will get to the promised land. So I'm happy tonight. I'm not worried about anything. I'm not fearing any man. Mine eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord.
Thank you for watching the 44th Annual Martin Luther King Jr. Community Leaders Awards, sponsored by Virginia Union University and Dominion Energy.